Welcome to our Writers Panel discussion streaming live from Renaissance Studios. I'm your host for today, Kia Fullerton, journalist, podcaster, and production coordinator. So today's session will be a little bit different compared to our standard workshops. Instead, we'll be having a panel discussion with our two guests where we'll cover important elements in writing for TV and film, as well as taking a look at mental well-being. So this will run between 12 and 2 p.m. We'll be joined by established writers Muriel Narh and Kelechi Ehenulo. I'm sure you guys are excited as I am for today. Just a few house rules. Have fun, stay engaged, and if you have any questions, just let us know in the chat room. Now, let's everyone welcome our two amazing guests, Muriel Narh, who joins us on Zoom, and Kelechi Ehenulo. So Muriel Narh is an award-winning writer who studied directing at Met Film School. Her portfolio includes shorts, pilots, series aired on UK and international platforms such as BBC, ITV, BET, and many more. Muriel also wrote and directed a short film, You Got Me, and wrote 3 Syncs, which won Best Low Budget Short at London Short Film Festival in 2018. We're also lucky to join with Kelechi Ehenulo, who joins me on the sofa here today, who is a Rotten Tomatoes approved film critic and in-house operation manager at Renaissance Studios. Kelechi's critical piece on Max Powell's documentary Don't Be Nice and her interview with writer and director Chinua Chukwu's film Clemency was featured in the Film Stories magazine. So thank you both for being here today. How are you both?
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm sure we're all cold and, winter guys, we have to keep it up. But
wear your thermals, that's what it's all about.
Yes,
you're lucky, really.
But yes, thank you again for joining us. It would be great if you both could introduce yourself to our audience. Let's start with you, Muriel.
I'm a writer-director. I've been script writing since 2010. I think I actually started first learning about script writing and how to format a script properly. But actually, before that, from 2008, I did a course on script writing, but then I didn't actually continue and actually really start to write scripts properly until about 2010. I work as a freelance first AD, worked on programmes that have aired on BBC, a short film called, how could I forget the name? Binge Watching, that was on BBC, a short film called Rive, that was on BET, worked on a pilot for ITV2 called Droppers, and I've worked on various other projects with various other people. I've written my own short, I've written a few shorts and writing web series, and the short that I co-wrote won an award at the London Short Film Festival. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. And on to you, Kelechi.
Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Kelechi Ehenulo, and I am a film critic. Recently approved by Rotten Tomatoes, so it's big up myself. So that was an amazing accolade to in my journey, in my progress. Been a film critic for about 2 years professionally, but beforehand I was writing, off and on, like as more or less as a hobby. And I've just been taking a kind of great fascination with film and just how to kind of communicate that with a general audience. And also, I'm also the operations manager here at Renaissance Studios, so pretty much most of the tech setup is under my control, along with Mr. Stuart Bray, who's managing everything at the moment. And also, I'm also the in-house copywriter here at Renaissance Studios. So I've been very fortunate and just privileged to be working with such an amazing team and working on pitches, working on documents that goes to commissioners, and working with partners like recently we've worked with Lambeth Council and even Eric Festival.
Nice, thank you. Yeah. So I believe each of you have a show reel / portfolio that you'd like us to show. Let's start with yours, Muriel, which is, I believe it's You Got Me.
Faster than a lightning bolt.
I don't know how he does it. All I know is when he does, I'm in purity. Every time it's the same thing. He draws me in, tells me what I want to hear, makes me feel seen, like I'm the only one in the room. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But when he does, it's all the same. I know when he's saying it, it's not true. Just words rehearsed. He's likely said it 100 times before, to the point it shouldn't mean a thing. Yet, here I am, soaking up every word, believing it, wanting it to be true. I know I'm not alone. I'm not the only one to hear these words. But then I see those eyes looking straight at me, just for me, and there's only us. All this belief suspended, and I'm right there with him, in it 100%. Those eyes, how they look mine. Intensity, the way they hold me, pierce right through me, move me, scare me, undress me, make love to me. Then he'll ask, how was it for you? Was it good? All I can say is, yeah, spot on. You got me.
That's a wrap, everybody. Amazing. Thank you, Muriel, for showing us today. So what was your inspiration behind You Got Me?
So I had gone on a directing course at Met Film School in South London, and on the course we had to work with this actor who had we were given a scene to each interpret in our own way, and it was a script where the words stayed the same, but our interpretation and our setting and everything of that, we got the choice on where it was set and how it was delivered and the pace and whether it was comedy and all the different things, elements that you can change. And this actor that was on set, I mean, to be fair, there were two actors, I shouldn't say, but he was particularly great in the way that every time he did it, like the emotion that was in it, and it was just every time, like I would get sucked in, and I was like, he was always crying, and I was almost crying with him, and everybody in the room was almost crying with him, and it's just the way that he changed it up, and every time he delivered it was something different, and every time, but it still drew you in. And I was just so impressed by him as an actor. And it was this kind of thing where like some of the girls are like, oh my God, he's so nice. And like they were fancying him because of his skill and everything like that. And when I wrote the script initially, it was to kind of like show someone falling in love with a character on a TV. And how as an actor, when you're doing your job right, people like you, people fall for you, or people hate you because that's the role that you're playing. And so that's what it was kind of like, that was the inspiration behind. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So yeah, let's take a look at Kelechi's portfolio. So yeah,
It's
it's
not as flashy as Muriel's. It's it's more. I guess for me, I'm on the other end of that kind of spectrum. You know, Muriel's obviously from the beginning and the creative aspect. Me, I would basically critique it and hopefully use articulate words to kind of describe a lot of the commentary and picking up on those themes about female gaze and so forth. So with this, with my portfolio is more articles I've written in the past. I recently wrote an article about Disney Pixar Soul.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, amazing film. But like a lot of when you're a film critic, it's all about having a conversation. It's not about what I say is right or wrong. We can agree to disagree. I mean, that's the best way to kind of establish it as being a film critic.
Yeah.
But being a film critic also comes with a responsibility, and it's about having a dialogue and a conversation that picks up on themes and interest, things that are more interesting for you to kind of bring out that will help a reader understand. So for me, it's about that engagement and trying to find that kind of uniqueness behind those pieces.
Wow, thank you. And I would like to ask, what has been your favorite film you've critiqued so far and why?
It's like a loaded question, that is. I mean, I think anything, I always like films that are obviously like entertainment wise. I can easily get lost in like watching anything from Marvel and the cinematic universe. I can get, I enjoy a good laugh and loving like comedies. I'm a big, massive Lauren Hardy fan. I love watching even the old classics. So like, things like Casablanca, for example. But I think any film that immediately just almost kind of goes beyond that kind of value, beyond that value. So anything that I guess strikes a chord, that just hits you on a different level that you just didn't quite expect. But at the same time, it's rewarding because you've gone through that journey, you're sharing those same emotions. So the most privileged thing, I guess one of my favorite things to review was last year when I was at London Film Festival, and being one of the early critics to go and watch Steve McQueen's Mangrove and Lovers Rock.
Yeah.
And that is two different encapsulations of Black culture, and I know the word timing becomes part of the conversation, but at the same time, it felt good to see a film that was not only reflective of it, but also highlighting the ongoing issues with it, as in within society. But also showcasing Black joy as well as, the everyday generational trauma that is having us as a community, and something like Lovers Rock, which was like the tail end of London Film Festival. And when you've seen so many different films, at London Film Festival, I managed to see about 24 films and wrote most of them. So yeah,
remember, like,
I know. This is why I take notes. This is why I take notes.
Yeah.
But seeing something like Lovers Rock, where it was just about just vibing in the music and the culture, that for me just became like the perfect tail end for London Film Festival. So yeah.
Thank you. Let's get started into this panel discussion then. Thank you again for both sharing your reels to us. First question I would like to ask, how did you get into the chosen profession? Was it an easy pathway? And what inspired you to write? Should we start with you, Muriel?
So what inspired me to write? I was thinking about that this morning, that when I was younger, I just used to always carry a pen and paper with me and write things and just write little ideas that came to my mind. And I remember one of my friends cussing me, being like, "Oh, why you always got a pen and paper on you for? It's not like you're going around getting guys' numbers or anything like that." And I don't know why I just always had a pen and paper, and I used to write ideas and hear people talk and things like that, and just have ideas of like, you know, you overhear a conversation on the train and it's just kind of like, oh, you want to know more, what's going on, kind of thing. So I used to create little things in my head of like what the backstory was and used to write them down. And then I started writing about crushes that I had on guys, and I used to write, oh, and then he comes and he says to me, oh, this, that, and the other, and then he picks me up, and then he kisses me, and all kinds of silliness like that. Like, and that was how I just kind of got into writing. And I used to share little stories with my friends and things like that, and they were like, oh, this is really good, write another one. Then I started writing dreams. I like, you know, when you have those dreams where nothing makes sense, and then this happens and that happens, and then you become someone else. I started writing all of those kind of things down, and it just kind of grew from there. So it was more just kind of like for fun, and just, or sometimes when I was angry and just get things on your nerves and just write it out and be like, ah. So it was just kind of like an expression of myself without understanding what I was actually doing. And then there was one time that this was one of the first kind of stories that I properly penned, where I'd got a call in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And this was the time I used to sleep with my mobile phone right beside my bed with it loud and everything like that. So I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning from some girl. I didn't know who she was. And she was just like, why is my man calling you? And I was thinking, what? Okay, hold on a second, wait. First of all, you've woken me up out of my sleep. Second of all, who's your man? And she was like, and then she hung up. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then like, she called back again and she started going off again. And I was like, what? I was like, who's your man? And she gave some name called Mark. And I'm like, I don't know anybody called Mark. I haven't been speaking to anybody's man tonight. Like, I don't know what's going. You need to call your man. Why are you calling me for, kind of thing? So I was relaying the story to some people at work. And then I was like, we were just kind of like trying to work out what goes through a person's mind to start calling up a stranger, kind of like in the middle of the night, to start haranguing them or everything. So, and the fact that it was the wrong number as well, because I don't know who her man was. And so I just kind of like started thinking about that story, and then kind of like wrote a story from that, and then wrote from her perspective. And then what happens if someone else was with their partner and their partner answered the phone and they were like, hold on a second, my girl's cheating with who, what? And then I wrote a story from there, kind of like writing that. And then I wrote and then I learned how to develop it into a script, and that's kind of like where it took off. And then from there I went from writing a short kind of thing into writing a feature, which was like first draft 172 pages and stuff like that. It was like, oh my god, how do you cut this down, how do you make it good? Oh my god, it's so complicated. But it was just kind of it was just kind of like curiosity, I guess, curiosity in human nature, and wanting to understand people and why people do things. And that's kind of like how it grew and developed from there.
So essentially it was just based on like your personal experiences, and you just translated it into your work.
Yeah.
Nice.
And other people's experiences as well. When people come and talk to you about things that they're going through, you identify or you empathize with them.
Nice, thank you. And how about you, Kelechi?
Well, it's nothing as dramatic. Sorry. Wish I had that. No, I mean, like anything with like being a film critic, you are inspired by the films that you watch. You know, when I was growing up, you know, I have a lot to thank with my brothers. You know, we grew up watching, you know, Eddie Murphy movies. You know, we grew up in a household where, you know, Spike Lee, John Singleton, were the common kind of films that we watched. And also, you know, but also just the different types of films we watch. So, you know, like I said before, it's, you know, Lauren Hardy, it's Basil Rathbone and Sherlock Holmes. It's, you know, I've got to thank my third eldest brother introducing me to a whole lot of martial art films. So Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Tony Jaa, you know, just like all these kind of like amazing films. And, you know, and also just like just being inspired by like, you know, even just like action movies, you know, like Die Hard. I don't know, I grew up with mostly boys, so just like, so I had that, there was no necessarily any like mostly female stuff anyway there. So, you know, it was mostly like Die Hard and so forth. And, you know, like silly enough, you know, you get almost inspired by those films and just how they just, you know, how they kind of shape on the screen. So I remember one time where I got this massive like cereal box that you can get from like cash and carry, and there's my like 10-year-old self, you know, loving movies so much that I actually wanted to recreate that whole scene from Home Alone where he slides down the stairs, where he slides down the stairs in his sleigh. And I did that in the family home, which, you know, my mum would be like, you know, come out and see the sort of the commotion, and, you know, it was a switch between, oh, are you okay, to like, girl, don't do that ever again. Can't lose you like that. Yeah. So it was being like, you know, inspired by those kind of things. But then as I got older and, you know, touch words, wiser, hopefully, I started to realize that film was actually communicating to me, you know, and just, you know, speaking a lot of things that were, I guess, relatable to my life, or just things that I've seen in like history or politics or society. And I thought, oh, that's quite interesting that's that point, or, you know, it could be just something random, but just something that they were picking up on that made me trigger in my mind. It's like, oh, this reminds me of this, or, you know, or even, you know, watching a film like, say, something like John Wick Chapter 2. And in the beginning is it, there is a short film, like a short ode to silent film. Yeah. And you realize that actually that point is actually showcasing how much the whole film operates like a silent film, because it is running off the beats of, you know, comedy, but also just how frenetic it is as well. So that became kind of my obsession with it. But then I just kept it all in my head until like I chat with like the most like friends and so forth. And my friend, you know, I have to give a lot of like shout out and love to him, because when we were working together at Blinkbox, he was like, you know, you should really put it down in a blog or something. Like, you really got some interesting thoughts. And I was like, I don't know. Like, who's gonna read anything? Like, I don't know. Like, and I kind of just sort of and ahed about it. And then, you know, I think it was around New Year's, and unfortunately I caught a flu, not COVID, just letting you know that, guys. But it was, you know, I kind of sort of looked at the new year and I just thought, what can I do that's different? And then I just started to play around with that idea. And then next minute, I started the blog, and it's called Professionals from the Geek Mind. And I just started writing from there. And I guess the rest is history.
Amazing, well done. Well done, both of you. Yeah, so having said that, do you both think it's necessary to have a formal education to become a writer? Muriel, what do you think?
I would say, I think it is important, but I don't think it's essential. If you haven't got a formal education, it doesn't. So I didn't go to university. I did, when I started getting interested in actual script writing, do a short course on how to develop scripts and how to write scripts, and so that I could understand, because I think it's really important. You have to learn on any level how to actually format, how to understand what it takes to write a story. That's not just any kind of like story. So I would say definitely it's I loved English when I was in school. I didn't understand it as, oh, English would give me a script writing career or anything like that. So, but I just loved reading books. I loved like reading. So I loved English, and I did want to go and do that in college and everything, but I was discouraged when I was younger. So that didn't happen for me. But later on I did go, as I said, I went back and I went to, I think it was City of Westminster, and did a course on script writing there. And there are lots of things online to kind of like help you understand how to write scripts. So I do think it's important to have some sort of basis, but I don't think it's the be all or end all if you can't do it. If you can, I would say definitely do a short course but the biggest experience comes from actually doing it, giving it to someone to critique, giving it to someone, and reading other people's. That is the best thing as well, reading other people's as well. So you can teach yourself to a degree, but you also need other people to help refine you. And that comes with any script writer on any level. So, yeah.
How about you, Kelechi?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with being like a film critic, the traditional path would have been, you go to university, you study journalism, which obviously opens doors to many different facets of what journalism you can specialize in. But yeah, you study journalism, you graduate, and then you start going into like the local newspapers, and then just build your way up from there. Yeah, that wasn't me. Long story short, I mean, and I always, I guess it comes as Muriel says, you just kind of just do it. But as I was, I was on and off writing, as a hobby, being a film critic. But as I was kind of slowly sort of immersed into that world, occasionally you do come up against, critics who were like, oh, you must know everything about Hitchcock, you must know everything about Bergman, you must know about Scorsese and Spielberg, all of these things. And, I used to think, actually, it's a little bit, elitist, kind of snobbish kind of attitude. And it's not to say that they're not wrong, they're not wrong in that. But, I always kind of felt like, well, what about, your Spike Lees? What about your Ava DuVernays? What about, your John Singletons? Where do they fit into that conversation of like actually critical, analysis of their work? I mean, I'm sure it's a lot better now, but certainly in my day, it was literally just, promotion of white critics and white films or white directors. So in terms of that culture, it was never necessarily brought to the forefront. So I guess when I started Confessions from a Deep Mind, it was always kind of like the antithesis or the counterculture to that, and trying to infuse, I guess, my experiences or certainly things that might not necessarily get picked up by other film critics, and just kind of just wade into that kind of argument that way. But now that I've been in that world, I'm considering that how much, I do think we live in a world where it's very easy to criticize, but not many people know how to articulate that criticism and give that kind of constructive feedback. And what you see, especially like on social media, where it's the amplification of that, whether it's a faux outrage, whether it's, some kind of weird agenda, whether it's like clickbait, whether it's something that is even more insidious, like, misogyny or, any trolling or severe trolling, or even just, gatekeeping and entitlement. I do now think it's very important to kind of know the back, some kind of context to what you're doing as a writer, doing the research and just actually understanding. So don't be afraid to learn about, color theory. Don't be afraid to learn about, color theory, camera movements, anything that will help you put in that little bit of insight, because at the end of the day, being a film critic is about having that conversation with people and having a nuance to bring up that kind of those debates. So it's not necessarily a requirement, but it's certainly take some interest, read around those subjects.
So can I add to that? So as Kelechi was saying, it's all about self-education. So regardless of what you're doing in any kind of business or any kind of thing that you want to get better in, you always have to keep on learning. So as Kelechi was saying, like learning about camera angles and things like that all kind of like goes into script writing and goes into storytelling, because it all tells a story. So as much as there's no one who will get into this and get further and get along without educating themselves. And it is about educating yourself with watching films, as Kelechi was saying, and watching what other people have done and understanding because it's not just watching it and going, oh yeah, that was good. It's understanding what they've done and how they've done it as well. So there's formal education may not be it's not the only way to go, and it's not necessarily always the best route, because everyone learns differently. But you do have to learn and you do have to understand, and that is very important.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you both for answering. Mira, I'd like to ask you, how do you go about writing a script for film? Do you use industry methods, or do you use your own processes to develop your own work?
I'm a bit of a weirdo when it comes to writing, because I don't use any one way, because different stories, first of all, the way they come to me is very different, and sometimes it depends on how it's come to me. So if I'm writing for another person, I will speak to that person and try and get as much information, try and get as much feeling for it, and then kind of like sit down and just kind of like try and understand in my mind the person, that the characters and the world and everything that I'm creating. Whereas if it's something that's my own, I always kind of like get a draft out as fast as I can, kind of like, so just so I can, because it's in my mind and because it's something I'm creating, I always kind of like, my mind can go off on a different tangent for something else, or I might see something else and it might spiral something else, and then I lose kind of like the nugget of the idea before. So I kind of try and jot something down. I love using like my emails as drafts. Like the amount of drafts that I have in my emails is crazy sometimes. But yeah, so it just depends on what I'm doing, or where the idea came from, or what kind of thing it is. So it changes for me. But I do, when I've written an idea down, or I've written a concept down, or I've started a draft of something, when I'm getting to the point of typing up to share with anyone else, I will always put it in form. I will always format it correctly. And when I started, formatting was just like, what? What's this? Like, what? And when you read a script sometimes for the first time that's being formatted, it's kind of like, why is that there, and why is this there, and like it's a bit weird, and sometimes it's kind of like hard to get your head around. But once you understand it and you see, it makes it so much easier to pick up on things. Like you can just read through the dialogue quickly, you can just read all the directions quickly, you can just read, and then it highlights things quicker for you, and it makes it easier to understand, and it makes it easier to break down for you when you're reading it. So I love I'm such a bit of a neek, but I love formatting. I do love formatting, like going through and just kind of like putting it in the right. And when I read other people's and it's like not formatted properly, I really just want to like, oh, send me the draft so I can just correct it. Like formatting, formal formatting is really important, especially when you're sharing with other people. But the process and how you do it, when I first started, I would just kind of like write all the dialogue in, and then I would kind of like go back and I'd write, I'd add the action and the directions and things like that. So because wrapping your head around it when you first start doing it can be quite overwhelming and intimidating. Oh my God, this is the internal, how much information do I put in there and how much do I put in that? And it can be like really overwhelming. So it's just about how you break it down for yourself in order to kind of like understand it, and then go back and just kind of like layer it up so that you get the final product. And even now when I'm writing, when I'm typing up something and creating the format, I still kind of like put bits of information in the action and then kind of like go back to it later on and add more details, because when you're creating something from your mind, you see so much in your mind, and you can't always translate it to the paper as quick as you can think about it. And so when you go back to it and you kind of like read over, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, but she looks that way, and then oh, but she picks up this, or oh, she moves over across to this place, which you haven't written in there initially, because in your mind you're just kind of like just trying to get everything out and onto paper. Mm-hmm. So some people are able to write everything and like sit down and write this and write the details and write everything perfectly, and I'm not that person. I start off with whichever way helps me get the idea moving and get the idea out and get the process going. And then I kind of like keep on developing it and keep on going back over it and keep on developing and creating in that way. When you learn about script writing, so there are a couple of books that I was told to read when I started writing, and that was Sid Field's Sid Field's screenplay, which is they say the Bible of how to write a screenplay. And definitely, yes, it's a great read. It's a great book of understanding, because it kind of like breaks down the process of writing a script and how industry professionals say you should write and everything like that. And it's really, really great. And I got that. I read it. I was like, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it. And then I started doing it, and then I started adding. And that's so I got that when I was wrote my feature, my 172 page feature. And it was just kind of like when I was redrafting, it was just like I was adding in this and I was adding in that and I was adding it to build the character, to do this, to do that, and to do the other. And it just kind of like overwhelmed me. And then I just got stuck and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And it was like, it was just too much. So I think it's important to understand how to format properly, understand how to create in the industry standard, but don't feel that you have to do it that way. You have to chokehold your way through their standards. Like, as long as what you're creating and what you're developing at the end of the day has all the details in it, has all the peaks and the troughs and things like that it needs to keep it going and to keep people interested, to keep on developing and creating that story. You don't have to stick directly to the standard way of doing things, but it's important for you to understand that. And then also another book I got was Blake Schneider's Save the Cat, which is really good. Like, I found that really, 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 I'm not saying that Sid Field book wasn't helpful, because it was all really, really great information and everything like that, and it did help me understand the whole process and everything better. Blake Schneider's book helped me understand in a different way about how to create, and it wasn't as intense for me. It was a lot more simplified, and it was a lot less pressured, and a lot kind of, it was just more enjoyable for me to kind of like read that book and understand how to create and develop script and formatting script, and the sense of like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, the midpoints of I don't know if I'm talking jargon that people don't understand. So in any feature, let's say, or even episode, you'll have 3 acts, and in the first act is kind of like the setup, the midpoint is the second act is kind of like the general story, and then the Act 3 is the conclusion. And then you have midpoints as well, and the midpoints are where the changing between Act 1 and Act 2, and the changing between Act 3 and Act 4. Act 2 and Act 3. So, so it kind of like, it tells you, so, sorry, I've kind of lost my train of thought now, gosh. But yeah, so these books, and they help you kind of like understand how to do those, how to create those, and how to develop stories in that way, so that it keeps people's interest and it keeps it keeps the story moving along and everything like that. So definitely understand it, but it's like anything, it's like you understand it so you can deconstruct it and make it work for you, and that's how everything is and how everything works in regards to script writing and formatting. Did you want to go a bit more? Or?
If you had anything else to add.
I don't know. I guess if
short research would be a fundamental part of script writing.
Yeah.
Knowing exactly what your subject is and what depending on the story and the context, like any bits of, I guess, facts or something that is inspiring that will feed into the script. I'm sure that would be an important aspect of it as well.
Yeah, and that's important to do before you start writing. I mean, if you want to get a general idea down just so that you understand what your story is about, great, do that. But then always go back and do the research in regards to the characters, the time, the place, the what roles are and things like that. So if your character is working in a job, have at least some understanding of what it takes to work in that job. Because there's so many times when I've read scripts, and even when I started, I created the script and it was like, oh, this person is an accountant, and they sit there and they tap numbers, and it's like, no, an accountant doesn't tap numbers into a calculator. There's a process. There's like actual things that go into it that you need to understand, and that all comes in with developing your characters, which is really, really important to do. And understanding your characters, when I was learning, I got taught that I was given a list of 20 questions about your character, and although that was kind of helpful, it doesn't really give me in depth in, like, you have to know and understand your characters. So your characters have to be an extension of you. And when I say an extension of you, I don't mean like extension of your personality. I mean, like, if something was to happen to that character as they're walking down the street, you would know how they react. It's like, you know how your mum would do this, or you know how your brother will do that. That is what, when you're writing, that is what your characters are. This is like, you're bringing a real person to life. I'm working with this lady at the moment on a drama, and we're co-writing it together. And when we're actually talking about the guy called Leroy, one of the characters called Leroy. It's like, no, but we have arguments. No, but Leroy wouldn't do that. Leroy's like, and we each have like, and this is what, when you're writing, it's an actual person that you're writing, although they may not exist in the real world, or if you're adapting something from real life, then they do exist. But if it's something that you're creating and they don't exist, they still need to feel like they fully exist. Like, when you're not with them, they're still doing stuff behind your back and they're still living their lives. And this is what creates something that's really authentic and really important. And I can send a link to this, but I found a link. I found this thing called a character tree, which helps you really understand how to break down a character, like their drives, their intents, what they've gone through in life and things like that. And it helps literally layer out a character like really in depthly, and that's all really important to have. I mean, it can feel like it's overwhelming, but it is it's take it at your pace, take it as works for you, kind of thing, as take it as in your stride and in a way that works for you, and don't overwhelm yourself with that, but actually have an understanding of who your character is. Because if your character starts doing one thing in the beginning and then they change around and they start doing something completely different, then it kind of makes your story not work in the right way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to take some questions from our audience. Sorry? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. So what we have here. So we have from Heidi. I'm used to writing stories in story/book format. Is that perfectly right to still do as well as making a script out of it? Yes.
Sorry, storybook format is very different from script writing, because storybook format, you kind of put a lot of information. I did actually so I did actually start writing. As I said, I'm a reader. I love reading books and everything like that. So when I started writing, it was in storybook kind of form. And when you're writing in storybook form, you put so much detail in there. Like, I'm trying to think. Gosh, it's been a while since I've done that. So the detail would literally be like the way something feels, or the way that when they breathe in, the old cold air goes through to their lungs, and it, like, you get all that kind of information when you write in storybook and novel format. Which, when you're writing in screenplay format, you don't put as much detail in, because you give emotions, like general emotions, to kind of understand why a character is doing stuff. You give details in regards to what the environment is, but you don't put as much detail in to kind of like oversaturate every kind of moment of everything, which you do in novel versions. In script format, you kind of want less, but you still want important details. So if a person's clothing tells you about them, you want to include what they're wearing, whether it's a certain color, like he's wearing a red jacket and he's wearing red trainers and red belt, and he wears red all the time because it's his mum's favorite color, and she said that she always loves to see him in red, and so he always wears it in memory of her because she passed away when he was younger, and things like that. So details like that are important to keep in a script, but not over excessive details, like the green grass is growing through the thing, unless you want to see it on the screen. When you're writing, it's all about what you're seeing on the screen. So writing emotions, which is in novel writing as well, you can't really write emotions in the same way that you do with novels. So when you're writing things like I'm trying to think how it would be in a novel. Gosh,
I guess because it's just more descriptive in a novel, really. Whereas, script writing is much more, as you were saying, covering the needs to know, but also putting in the camera direction or the emotion that's going to be picked up when you actually go ahead to production. So
yeah,
I think it's with novels, you can, depend on your editor and how that is, conveyed. The information that you provide is to help build that story, that context, those themes. Because in most cases, when you read a novel, you are building that imagination in your head.
yeah.
In a script writing kind of format, it's now turning that imagination into direction, into a clear direction, so that if it's Muriel as she's got experience with a director, or anybody else who's going to pick up that torch to film it, it's going to be, okay, the writer had this idea, but maybe I can bring in something, another camera movement, or maybe change the color palette, maybe bring in, or add in an extra scene or something to help build in the geography of how this is going to get mapped up. So I think just think of it in that way, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. We've got another question for you, Muriel. When writing scripts, do you have purpose for it prior to jotting ideas down? For example, are you aiming to evoke an emotion or a feel-good movie, or bring in awareness to something?
It depends on what the script is. Sometimes it's just for fun. Sometimes it is to bring an awareness about something. So, as I said, like the first one that I kind of like wrote down was just kind of like an exploration of someone's psyche, of why they would call someone at 2:00 in the morning, call someone they didn't know, and it was just an exploration of that. And it was also kind of like to change a perspective, because the perspective for me was that this person must be nuts, and like, what is she on about? Like, do you know what I mean? And it was in a way challenging myself, kind of like, no, it could think deeper, like think differently about, to challenge how people think, and just get them to think differently about different situations and explore people's emotions and what makes people do things. And then other times I've written things like my dad passed away a few years ago, and when he did, he wanted to be cremated, and that was like the worst thing for my mum. Like, it was like, what? She was like so wholly against cremation, and here's the person who she's loved most of her life, like saying he wants to be cremated, and it's like she has to do what he wants because it's his like dying wish kind of thing. And so sometimes it's an exploration of that, and in that I kind of like unraveled something for myself that I'd been dealing with without knowing it, like not in regards to my dad but in regards to something else prior. So it's everything, like inspiration comes from all manners. So sometimes something is about changing people's perspectives, sometimes it's about going through something yourself, sometimes it's about trying to get people to see things differently. And what do you call it, as you said, like the purpose of it is to educate someone in knowing that something isn't right, or knowing that what do you call it, what you feel your experience of something or what someone else's experience of something is different, and just kind of like re-educate people in a way. So for me personally, there's no one thing or no one reason to kind of like write. It's like varying reasons. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a question as well. What software would you recommend for anyone either starting out as a writer?
When I started out, I used Celtex because it was free, and I didn't want to pay for anything because I was like, I didn't know what it's going to be like and everything. So yeah, Celtex was good and it was free, and it was that's how I started. But Celtex, it's been a while since I used it, but when I used it because I've got some scripts that are still on Celtex, and when I've gone back, I was like, oh, the formatting isn't right. But yeah, so I think they have changed now where their formatting is kind of like a bit more structured and everything like that. But Celtex is what I used when I was starting out. I think there are quite a few free tools out there. I did go to the BBC Writers' Room and download. They've got a formatting. They've got a document on there about how to format things properly. So if you don't want to pay for any software, you can start learning in Word and just understand how to format and push things in the right way and do it that way. It is a lot more work. If you can afford it, I would go for Final Draft. I love Final Draft because it kind of does it for you. So when you put in a character, it's automatically remembers characters. When you're writing and you're typing, there are all these shortcuts that kind of pop up for you. When you write a character's name and then you press enter, it automatically goes to dialogue, because whenever you have a character, you're generally going to have them speaking afterwards. And then tap again and it goes to action, because most likely you're going to, after the character said something, they're going to do something. Those kind of things go hand in hand unless you've got another person's dialogue going afterwards. But Final Draft really kind of like, it speeds things up and it kind of helps kind of like bring that all forward and everything like that. So I would say if you can't afford to buy Final Draft, go for Celtex or another free one. Go to BBC Writers' Room, download the whenever I'm working with anyone who hasn't written before, I always send them the draft. What is it called? It's called screenplay format. I can send the links for those as well. But yeah, go there and get the formatting. It kind of like tells you how to format and why to format in this way. So yeah.
And I don't know if you stick with Word or
Word. I also use Grammarly.
yeah.
That's always a nice little software to kind of like, you know, just even just little nitpicks. Like the amount of times I've written something and I put it's, but it's IT apostrophe S, but I write it sometimes I miss it and there's an ITS. And obviously that changes the dynamic of the language. So any kind of writing tool software that will just help you, you know, get your context around, and just pick up those kind of silly mistakes. That's worth it. So yeah, Grammarly is my one recommendation for software as well.
Yeah, I think it's really good just to have both paid and free, so it helps everyone. So yeah, Kelechi, question for you. I know that as well as working as a film critic, you have experience in packaging work for commissioners. Can you explain the process for those who are new to this side of things?
Yeah, I guess to kind of think of it is, when I was as a film critic, it's kind of like me, myself, and I. Like you're developing that idea or your consciousness and put it onto the screen. But with packaging for commissioners, it's more to do with changing your mentality. So it's not about you, it's now you're writing to appeal to someone, you're writing to a consumer. So it's no different from, a questions of maybe how you maybe even start a story. Even just writing a simple text message. Like you're always asking yourself the who, the what, the why, and then the how. as simple as that.
Like that triangle.
Yeah. Who's this for? What is the idea? Why is it needed? And then how you're gonna deliver it. And that how could easily be, I'm gonna do it as a YouTube series, or this is gonna be a book, or this is gonna be sent to Channel 4 or something like that. And then you have to, I guess, the more you scrutinize and the more you start to kind of build into those, the idea. So whatever the idea is, whether you're presented with a brief, which at Relaxation Studio we get, quite a few. So literally it's me reading the brief and then just started breaking down that requirement. So, something like, I'll bring up this one, for example, like Eric Fest, which I worked on and did the copy for. We did a takeover for Eric Festival and produced this magazine. So the idea was they wanted to create a magazine, but also to appeal to young people within the community, within the language community, and really just give them, an aspiration of what, hyping up their dreams, basically, and giving them the connections into the industry. So for me, it was like, okay, so we want to kind of interview these people, get their story, and then get their creative aspirations out there into the world. So I was lucky enough to interview these amazing young talented artists and actually, craft their story. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, whether it's, again, a brief or a pitch or whatever, you're communicating your story. That doesn't change, or no matter what you do. So it's understanding that and then also breaking down those requirements, because sometimes you go to clients and they will, sometimes they don't have an idea what they want. Like, the amount of times I've done rewrites and stuff like, I want it this way. And then, it's about gathering as much as information as you can so you can try and deliver it in the best way.
Asking the right questions.
Asking the correct questions. The more you do that, the less work it is of you. I've worked on, I've done bid writes for people, and the amount of times I've done that writing and I've done more of the creative thinking than them shows that they have not scrutinized their own work. So even though even if it's your project that you're projecting out there, try and do those due diligences. Try and ask those questions that even though you may never have thought of, share it with a friend of yours, anything that, because sometimes you can be so caught up in that bubble of the work that just sharing off to somebody might actually, like, oh, Kel, did you think about this? Oh, no. Right. Go back to the redraft and start including that in. So anything that helps you articulate the idea and the vision is always good. Yeah. So think about the who's, your what's, your whys, and then how you're going to deliver that, and then write it to the style that matches the client.
Thank you. I'm aware that both of you obviously are new to writing. However, you both have achieved great things. I just want to ask, what has been the best way to get your work noticed? Kelechi?
I guess with me, with like film reviews, like I said, I mean, I started writing Confessions from the Geek Man, and I did it for myself. Like, I didn't even necessarily think about like how many clicks I was going to get, or no one's going to start doing Coming to America and start laying rose petals at my feet. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like that. I literally just I just kind of posted it out there, and just prayed. I prayed. But as you start to get more, I guess, confident in what you're doing and you're working, now and again you do get like requests from people, like, hey, this is a great, piece you wrote or something, I shared it with my friends and family, and it's like, oh, Kel, this is amazing, this is great. And you start to build that circle. So when I started writing for professional, when I started my blog, I was able to attract a podcast of a TV show that I used, that I sometimes get on go on, which is the X-Files podcast. And they asked me to come and help write this stuff about X-Files. I was like, okay, cool. Let me extend my time that way. And then those doors started to open up in terms of like, okay, now I've gone from that, and then I went into Set the Tape. Then it went to Vulture Hound, then it's like to Film Stories, Jump Cut. So for me, it's about, once you've gone on those journeys, you start to open up your horizons and open up to different people and people who you can collaborate with. So more or less, you start building your own network. And soon enough, you have your own film critic network. And pretty much everybody starts to know each other. Everybody's like bigging each other up, sending each other's work. And even just liking and commenting, like that's how I kind of started building up my own followership on Confessions from the Geek Mind. I just started commenting on other people's work, resharing people that I like. Oh, this is really great, and I reshared that. And then people start to get engaged with you. And some of the people who I've met from that kind of experience are now like, my longtime friends of mine now. Like they're part of that. They're not just network. They're like in a network. You know what I mean? So anything that just kind of you build your connections that way. So that's how you get work out there.
How about you, Muriel?
For me, it was the same thing. It's kind of just sharing my work with other people. So sharing my work with sharing things I've written with other people. And I've got a friend who wrote a book, a self-published book, and he went the standard route of actually he didn't. He wrote a book and then he went to university to learn about writing and everything like that. So when I started writing myself, I was kind of like, oh, let me share it with him. And so I used to share stories and things that I wrote with him. And then one day I wrote a script that he liked and wanted to help me kind of create. And he shared that with other people. So we shared that together and started developing that, and then created that project. And then from there, people saw that project. And then I started kind of like, people started asking me questions about what I was doing. And then also generally as a writer, like, you don't jump in and start getting paid for writing and things like that. So I was working at different places, and as I said, like, I like to just kind of like write wherever I can. My favorite place to write is on the tube. So when I'm on the tube, when I'm writing something, people like looking over my shoulder, oh, what's that kind of thing. And so wherever I go, I kind of like, and people ask, oh, what do you do? It's like, oh, I write. And it's when you're starting out as a writer, you never want to tell anyone you're a writer, because they go, oh, what have you done? And you're like, but it's so good to just tell people that you write, because that just opens conversations. 3 Sinks, that the short that I was on that won an award, I was working in an office, a fashion office, and I used to just tell people that, oh, I write and I write and I write. And this guy that was worked in the IT department, he was just like, oh, I write too. And it was just like, oh, great. And it was like, oh, my friend is writing this thing, and like they had this person on it, and she's just not getting it. And it was like, do you want to have a go at it? And I was like, okay. And he hadn't even seen anything I'd written. But just from me talking about it, I got involved with the project. I got the kind of like what's it called, treatment of what they were trying to do, and wrote a draft for them, and they were like, oh my god, this is great, we love it. And from there I kind of like jumped on a project with them, and he won an award. Woo! Like, so that was just literally from talking to someone. And so yeah, talking to people wherever you can, you never know where this opportunity came from. An IT guy in a fashion company, like, you never know where the opportunity is going to come from. So talk to people, just connect with people. Network is the word, but I hate that word, and I don't like networking. But that's what it is. It's just talking to people about what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you enjoy doing, and sharing your work with people, and writing. From actually writing, that's how you get people to see your work, from creating it, writing it, putting it out there, sharing it with a friend, creating something short and small. Like, you do get bogged down sometimes thinking that when you start, you have to create this big epic, pick up your mobile phone, there was this lady that I started talking to recently about writing and everything like that. She did this great short where it's called Lunchtime, and it's literally like two people in the kitchen. Oh, I'm hungry. What about you? Yeah, I could eat. Let's go out and get something. Okay. And then the next scene, you see them feasting over a person and blood dripping down their face. That is it. That could have been done with a mobile phone. Like, don't think that you have to write this great big epic thing. Like, you can create something short, quick, something budget, do it, create it, put it out there, let people see it. And that's kind of like how you get conversations started, even if it's like, and the thing is that people worry about things being great, and it's just about starting, and you develop and you get better as you go along. You don't get better. You don't walk into it being this great person who's created great things. You start, you develop, you get better, and you get better, and you get better, kind of like thing. So yeah, it's all about just networking with people, talking to people. There are events like Rain Dance. They have a free networking events where you can go and meet other people and talk to them. I'm really, really bad, but I've just discovered that Eventbrite do more than raves. So yeah, Eventbrite have events where you can go and connect with other people, and connect with other writers groups and things like that. Go in there and share your scripts. I know people are very conscious about sharing scripts and ideas and stuff like that, but what I've learned and what I've been learning is that when you write something, it's authentic to you. No one can do what you do because no one has lived your life, no one has experienced your life in the way that you have. So when you're writing something, don't be afraid to share it with other people, because you're worried that they may steal the idea, they may steal an idea, they may steal something, but no one can ever create anything that you have created, because no one is you. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, or if that just seems a bit of whatever, but it's all about sharing your ideas. If you never share your idea with anyone, no one can ever see what the potential that you have. So sharing your ideas, meeting, networking, talking to people. I went to a film festival, Soul, I've forgotten what it stands for, but it's SOUL festival. And I was talking to a lady there about just kind of like about what we had watched and everything like that. She asked me what I did. I said I was a writer director. She was like, oh, it'd be really great to send me something. So I sent her something. She's like, oh, we have a theatre group that they do, a group of actors who get together and just rehearse odd bits and pieces and stuff that keep themselves sharp while they're not working and things like that, and sent them the script and they acted it out for me. And it was like really great to kind of like get real feedback from professional actors on the script and things like that. And then from there it kind of like turned into something else. So it's all about talking to people, meeting people, networking with people, and talking to people, everyday people who you may think have nothing to do with the industry, have no interest in this, that you never know where something's going to come from. I know how I met Tamara, who is involved with this is through a guy who I was sitting in a cafe working on something, and he kind of like looked over and was just like, oh, what was that? Oh, that looks really good. And we started a conversation there, and it got me a job. So you never know where the next thing is going to come from, the next contact, the next person. So it's all about just, you're passionate about what you do. You're passionate about writing, even if you're not at a level that's like anything that you think is great. Start talking about it. You start to develop, and it helps refine you, and you start to meet people, and someone might go, oh, okay, like you're interested to do that. Okay, try and write this for me so that I could do. You never know it's going to come from. Just do. Meet people, talk.
There's a whole world of possibilities out there for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Kelechi, I just want to ask, in a market that is saturated with other creative writers, how do you translate your passion into your work?
I mean, I always go back to, you know, my childhood, you know, like just like my love of film, do you know what I mean? And, you know, being able to watch so many different types of films, and also being, you know, getting that kind of messaging and the context and the subtext, everything that was like, okay, this is speaking to me. But I guess for me, like as I've, you know, gotten older, for me, it's about what I can bring to the table. You know, when I think about the world of film criticism, it is generally dominated by white male, and again, academy age, it will be over 50, and most of those reviews were always singing from the same hymn sheet. So for me, it was like, okay, if nobody's going to speak about my life experiences, the same way Muriel was talking about, if no one's going to talk about my story, who will?
Yeah.
If nobody was going to talk about some of the experiences I've gone through in my life, or how this film is picking up a message that relates to myself, then who's going to tell that story? And for me, that's been the one driver that just kept me going, you know. And I've seen, you know, sad to say, I've seen critics who have quit their role because they felt like, you know, they didn't feel like they were making an impact, which is it's sad for me. Like, it's disheartening for me. There's others who were like, you know, I'm not getting, you know, there's obviously social economic barriers because, you know, it's sad to say that, you know, you can't necessarily make money off being a film critic. You have to be almost like the Mark Kermode or the Peter Bradshaws of this world, you know, to kind of get that kind of like salary and, you know, the luxury to kind of go to these like press screenings and so forth, you know. So that's why I always say being a film critic is a privilege and a luxury. So it's a privilege to be in the space and having those early access, but at the same time, it's a luxury if you can afford it.
Yeah.
And not many people can afford going to film festivals. Not many people can afford, you know, going to a press screening, especially if most of them take place in London. You know, and, you know, there's film critics, of course, around the world. There's film critics in Glasgow, Birmingham. So even just travel costs, anything like that, it's hard. And I think when those kind of obstacles keep coming, and, you know, obviously everybody's on a different spectrum, I always try and put value on, you know, the words that I write. The words matter, you know, and as I talk about story and representation, it's me communicating that, because who else is going to do that? And, you know I'm not alone. There's thousands of Black critics out there. There's thousands of Asian critics out there, but it comes down to accessibility. You know, it comes down to those axes, and some of those axes are unfortunately out of our control, but we still try and push ahead where we can. You know, so I don't necessarily think about the clicks and the accolades and sort of like, they're great if, like, you know, hey, that post I did got 400 likes, cool. But it's, for me, I always go back to what I enjoy about writing, and that is because writing can be fun. It's also as well. Like, writing is hard. I'm not gonna lie, like, it is the hardest. I'm not dissing anybody who does any other aspect of creative part, but writing is hard because most of the time it is coming from you, and it's you and your thoughts You know, I'm not saying you're in a darkened room, you know, like with a candlelight or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But it is you expressing your vulnerabilities and your thoughts onto a page. And for most people, that is a hard thing to do. You know, it's hard to articulate yourself to do that. So for me, I kind of enjoy the highs and the lows. Most of the time I get imposter syndrome. Like you're just like, what have I done? I can't, you know, I'm not writing for Empire magazine or something like that. It's just, you know what I mean? I had this plan, I had this date, but you know, sometimes, you know, just being able just to appreciate what you do is enough of a value, you know. And you know, I know sometimes the world doesn't seem, you know, as receptive as we will probably go into a little bit later, but in terms of how you navigate that wider industry, you have to believe in yourself and believe that the words that you write matter and they have value. Because otherwise, who else is going to communicate that story?
Yeah, it's very interesting you said that. Obviously, not every film critique can attend film festivals, but I guess, you know, the whole social media, I don't know, maybe the organisers might host it online or...
Yeah, I mean, like London Film Festival for the first time because of COVID was able to do majority of the screenings online. So in some ways that became much more accessible for more critics to kind of join into the fun. And even through that, I was able to help critics like even just get through the application stage, just so they can actually get their press accreditation. So that in itself it has been like, I guess, one barrier broken because of COVID. And I just hope that, you know, and many other film festivals are doing the same thing, and they're opening those doors to even international recipients, so that, you know, you can actually review films that, you know, I've never been to Sundance. Unfortunately, I've missed the application for this year, but next year, don't worry, next year. But the fact is that most of it is online, means that, okay, I don't have to think about travel costs because it's all at home. Do you know what I mean? So I think those are those kind of things that help get you into those doors and into those spaces to kind of review those kind of films, you know. But I mean, we don't have time to kind of go through all the details and the nuances of being a film critic, but there are so many different obstacles that you will have to navigate. You know, it's, you know, opportunities from PR companies, your editors, you know, how many +1 tickets can you get? So you can go, but then you're inviting somebody else to come with you, say, hey, you didn't get that spot, come, I got you, fam. Like it's like that. So it's kind of like, how do we help each other? And like I said, once you're in part of that film critic network, you know, we're always trying to help each other out, because we all know that the disadvantages shouldn't be a disadvantage anymore. Like we are all trying to uplift each other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very motivational. See it then. Yeah. So yeah, on to the next slide. Muriel, how do you keep your motivation up whilst working in a uncertain industry, and especially in the climate that we're in now with the whole COVID and lockdown and everything else?
So this is hard because sometimes it can be really hard to keep your motivation. And I'm talking like me, myself, from through the lockdown kind of like, and this whole COVID thing, my income was kind of like, boop. So that was just kind of like, oh my God, like I don't have money coming in the same way that I did before. Like, and it can be hard sometimes to kind of like pull yourself out of that mindset and that mind frame. But what I sounds really stupid, but I do find writing is a release. Writing is a way to just kind of like get things out. And there was one that I remember in the summer, there was one, I don't even know what happened or why it happened, or like I'd been fine, and then all of a sudden I just felt really, really horrible and really miserable and down kind of thing. And I was just like, I didn't want to do anything. And I just literally started writing this whole concept and this is what I was saying about sometimes it's not about sitting down and going through the structure of things like that. I was just having a bad day, and a really, really, like, to the point where I haven't told a lot of people this, but I was sitting down crying for a good half an hour, and I didn't know why. And it was just kind of like, and it wasn't like gosh, it wasn't a hormonal thing kind of thing. Like it was just something was just on me that I just didn't understand. And I just started writing. And as I started writing, this kind of like story just kind of like came from me. And that just kind of like, I don't know what it was or why this thing just kind of like decided to sit on me, but it did. And just from writing, it kind of like just kind of came out and I felt better and kind of got a draft of the next script from it. Kind of like it's, so writing for me is something that really, really helps me and really gets me through it. And even in the times when I'm not feeling, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a creative script. It just can just be literally, I guess I used to write in my diary. I used to have a diary when I was younger and I used to write in that all the time. And it's that thing of just kind of like getting it out. And also when you're like, so writing, as I said, like that helps me and everything like that. But then you kind of like got this thing and it's just like, oh man, I've got this thing and like COVID is happening and I can't do anything with it. Share it with someone, talk to someone. I've got friends that I talk to about writing friends that I talk to about scripts and kind of like bash ideas back and forth with them about this, that and the other. And that's something that helps me. Sometimes just stepping away from everything and just flicking on a good movie like that you love, that makes you feel good, that just kind of like flicking on something that's different, like a documentary. I watched I'm not a big documentary person, but I watched a documentary the other day and it was just kind of like, it made me feel amazing. Like it made me feel like I could conquer the world. And so it's just about trying to find, it's not about forcing yourself to be in a different space. It's about trying to understand why you're in your space and try and navigate around it or find a way to release it. That's what I found. And I was watching a webinar recently about the whole kind of like mental being good to yourself and everything like that, and things like pampering yourself. Like, I guess it's gonna sound silly, but like I like hot baths, so a nice hot bath and like things like ice cream, or I'm not going to encourage like you to get drunk in your house and stuff like that overly all the time and stuff like that, but just something that makes you feel good and just kind of lets you feel like you've taken care of yourself. All those kind of things help in regards to feeling good and keeping faith and moving on. Share it, especially sharing with other people. That is something that is really, really good. Like they say, a problem shared is a problem halved, and there is no lie in that. But make sure you share with the right person. You don't want to share with someone who's pessimistic. Share with someone who can bring you up and who get you thinking outside of yourself, because when you're in a bad funk, sometimes it's being on your own and just not, it makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. But when you share with someone and you share with the right person, they kind of like pull you out of yourself and kind of like make you see yourself in the right light. And just kind of like, sometimes it's good to just kind of like look back and just reflect and try and be thankful for things that have happened in the past. And when you kind of like be thankful for each of the stages that you've gone through and each of the different things that you've gone through, because it's brought you to this stage of where you are now, where you can still do more. And when you look back and you look at all the good things that have happened, it kind of makes you think, oh, hold on a second, I remember how I felt when I was back then and everything like that. And it helps you realize that how you're feeling right now is not how you're going to be in a year or in a month or in a week or in even a day from now. So there's so many different ways to kind of like keep on going and everything like that. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. So
Sorry.
No, I would echo the same thing as Muriel, you know, like celebrate the small victories. You know, sometimes it can be, you know, even something as, you know, like last year, obviously, it was just dominated by COVID and lockdown and so forth. And, you know, even I've had, you know, being in a lockdown situation can also impair your mental health. So for me, it was regularly talking to friends of mine. You know, I mean, even, you know, when something like George Floyd happened and his death, you know, one of those kind of intimate skills I had was actually just conveying my thoughts onto the page. Like I didn't think about Grammarly. I didn't think about like I just wrote it down. Just because I didn't want the thoughts in my head anymore. I just wanted to be somewhere out there. And then I had the confidence to share that with my editor at Set the Tape, and she said, "We're running it," and that was it. And and it started sort of doing the rounds on the net. But it was for me. It was like, for me, I look at writing as therapeutic, and I think anytime you can go into yourself and express your emotions, it can come out onto the page. But in any moments where it starts to feel overwhelming, it's always good to step back. Like, just go and read a book, go and listen to your favorite film scores, go and take a walk, just something that just takes your mind off something, and then that kind of helps you reshape your mind, and then you come back and hit your writing in another way.
Nice, thank you. So I've got a question for both that I will pose to you both. So how have you dealt with public critique of projects that you've worked on?
I mean, there's an old saying, like, you always sorry, I'm looking at Paddington. I'm always they always say, you always remember your first bad reaction. And I remember writing a review for Passengers, which stars Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, and I absolutely trashed that film. It's just trash.
I remember I watched that.
Titanic in space, it was just no good. Everything about that whole story and how it evolved, like, it easily could have been turned into a nice little mystery or something like that. But then they just did the conventional thing. He wakes her up from sleep, and then it's like, hold on, you've murdered this girl. Like, you made her, like, she doesn't get to live because he's lonely. It's really bad. And I just remember one guy literally went on my blog and literally just trashed me, like he said, "You don't know nothing about science fiction," because that's one of my favorite genres. And so it's like, "You don't know nothing about science fiction. You should be ashamed to be a film critic. I went to film school. I know more about film about you." And I remember reading that and thinking, "Oh my God!" Like, I mean, like I said, it's always about growth and development, and evolving, because, when you start out, when I started that film career, I knew I sucked. But the way I look at it, the only way is up. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you write more. But I remember being, like, sort of taking it to heart, and I just thought, wow, why would you write something like? Why would you get the time and the energy to kind of do that? But there was parts of me where, like, man, I'm gonna clap back and but then I just sort of took a breather and I just said, you know what? Yeah, think about it. That's not, it's not me. It's not me. Like, that's, I think sometimes it depends on the nature of the criticism. I'm trying to say. If it's constructive criticism, where, like, something like recently when I wrote the article about salt, I've had so many different people come to me talking about, "Kel, you hit the right spot. I'm glad you articulated that." I've had conversations with friends who were like, "I think you're blowing it out of proportion. It's just like, it's a good fun. You're being too harsh. It's like, why did you, like, what was you doing?" But I said, look, I needed to say, but we were having the conversation. And that's the point about being a film critic. You're having that dialogue. Think of it almost like you're having you're having, going into a pub, pre-COVID. Pre-COVID. You know what I mean? And then having that conversation with your group of friends, it's like that kind of thing. But we agree to disagree. For most people out there, unfortunately, on social media, there's so many, like I said, there's not enough time to go into that, but there is so many reasons as to why they would do such a thing. And I've seen even more intense backlash. I've seen even just recently with Wonder Woman 84, where one guy who is officially blue checked, I'm not going to name the name, but literally he came out and said, anyone who gave it a positive review, they are fake critics. And my whole Twitter timeline felt like that scene in Community where Donald Glover walks into the room and then everyone's just like fanning at the flames and that sort of thing. So, for me, I log off because I just need to take a step back, because for me, it's how do you manage your time and your mental health, because at the end of the day, most of the people, when they write this stuff, they don't know what went through a writer's mind. They don't know what they were going through, whether it's emotional or whether they just literally connected to it. I'm happy to announce, films are subjective. That's everybody takes what they are. But at the same time, there's a right way and wrong way of like conversing with that. in terms of that particular person who came at me, I didn't waste any time with that. I just said, you know what, you're on your own there. Because at the end of the day, that criticism is probably more a reflection of them rather than what is on me. You know, and that's what it is.
It's just all about having respect for each other. And respecting each other's work. Thank you. Muriel, how about you? How have you dealt with, if any, public critique of your work?
So when you're writing, as Kelechi saying, like a lot of the times as a writer, you're putting a bit of your self into it, your heart, your soul, kind of like it's opening up like yourself to the world and everything that. So when someone comes back and they say something negative, it can be really hard to kind of like take, and it could be soul crushing sometimes. But as Kelechi said, it is important to kind of like take a step back. So there are times where you have to be objective about the feedback you're getting or the criticism you're getting, because there are people that, as Kelechi was saying, there are people who've been to film school and everything like that, and like, they're so like, but Scorsese and this and that person and this, and it's just kind of like, sometimes people talk because they like to hear their own voice and because they like to postulate, like they like to just kind of like, puff out their chest and kind of like show how much knowledge they have and everything, rather than actually understanding. So sometimes you've got to discern what feedback the person is giving you and why they're giving you that kind of like feedback. And sometimes even someone who's giving like really stupid feedback may have a nugget in there that is kind of like helpful. So as much as sometimes it can as much as sometimes it can be harsh to get feedback, it does help you. It's important, and it is like negative feedback. It does kind of like, for me, I do actually, sorry, bear me 1 second. I do actually like getting feedback, and feedback that isn't, because there are so many people that I've sent things to, like family and friends and stuff, that will read stuff and go, it's really nice, and that's all you get, and you're like, nice doesn't help me. I need more, like does this work, does that work? And they go, like I liked it. And it's like, no, you're like, I need, and then you get people like Tamara who like rips it apart for you sometimes, and sometimes you need that kind of like shredding of something to kind of like see the holes in it and see like, okay, as much as you were writing this, you were teeting around the edges of like what you were actually trying to say, rather than kind of like getting into it, because that's a bit too vulnerable, it's a bit too personal, it's a bit too much for me, kind of thing. So it can be really, and especially like when you're working on something and like someone comes back and they're like, I didn't like this and I didn't like that and that didn't work for me, and it's kind of like, oh my god, stop talking, it's enough, kind of like, it's harsh, kind of, it can be really harsh, but it's about, I know it sounds really hard, but it's about trying not to take it personally and stepping back and kind of like looking at what they're saying and trying to understand why they're saying it, seeing if you can see what they've said. And like someone who comes and says, it's really crap, it's really this and that, and doesn't give you those kind of feedback and criticism, you just kind of like push them away. Like you want someone to actually explain to you what they didn't understand, because a lot of times when someone's giving you feedback on something that they didn't like or that didn't work, it's because they haven't understood it, and it might be because you left out a word here, or because you didn't express something in that way or in the way that people can relate to and understand, and that just kind of like refines you as a writer. But it's really harsh sometimes to get like really good feedback, and sometimes it's really harsh when people just say, it was good, but like it's crap because of this and that and the other, and you've put yourself into it, kind of thing. But it's that thing of like step back, try not to take it personally, try to see if there's anything in it. If there's something that you can see, then know that, okay, next time I can do this better, or I can improve on this way. If it isn't, just wash it away, let it go, don't take it personally, and know that you've still done it. Like, regardless of what anyone says, you've done it, you've achieved, like, and next time you will achieve better. Like, so don't ever let feedback, negative criticism stop you. Don't let it, never take it on as you can't do it. And even me now, I still write things and I'm like, oh my god, this is so rubbish. I read something that I wrote last year. I wrote it and just kind of like put it away, and I was sending it and I thought, oh, let me send this to someone to you. And I read it again and I was like, oh gosh, and I was like, oh my god, I can't write like this is. And then I had to check myself and be like, okay, Muriel, this is a first draft. Like, this isn't anything to get kind of like, do you know what I mean? So no matter where, and there's so many writers that I've talked to and spoken to who are like at pinnacles of like writing and things like that, and even they kind of like do things. And if you read what's her name, Michaela McCall, yeah. when she wrote I May Destroy You, apparently it took over 100 drafts to write that. Like, everybody writes badly, and if you don't write badly, then I can't even, yeah, everyone writes badly, so never take it personally. Know that it's something that you can become better and you can develop from. So try and take that step back. It's harsh, it can be hard, it can be like, oh my god, like, but yeah, no, definitely.
I just want to quickly add, you know, like anything you write, you know, it's a learning curve. You know, you're not expected to get it first time right. The amount of times I've done copywriting, I thought, yeah, done it in the bag, and then next week the clientele comes out, actually, yeah, we need to rewrite this. I like this word, but you know, in reality, they just wanted to kind of like just toss the thing, you know. So for me, you're always, you know, it's always a learning curve. I'm expected to get it right the first time, but nobody goes out into the world intentionally to put out bad work. Exactly. Like, they're always coming, you know, as honest as possible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Learn those lessons and hopefully try and take it into the next project.
Thank you. So yeah, moving on. Quite an interesting topic actually, and that is how do you manage writer's block? Are there any methods you use to overcome procrastination and writer's block?
I think me, I like, because I'm a, you know, obviously film critic. I love listening to film scores. So for me, I you know, right now I'm currently listening to Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. They did scores for Mank, Soul, and even one of my favorite, I would say, underrated Denzel Washington films, which is The Book of Eli. So like, for me, I love listening to those music. Even something as, if you ever want to make your writing feel epic, listen to Hans Zimmer. Like, anything, listen to Hans Zimmer. So like, anything that just puts you in the mood, really, that can help you just, I guess, set a tone. But if it's really, really hard, like I've had times where I've written reviews where I'm just like, man, this doesn't make any sense. I'm effing and blinding, you know, obviously I'm not repeating it, but you know, but I'm just like, oh my God, you suck, like everything, like, you know, but it's important to take a step back. So even going, you know, as procrastination can be bad, you know, go and clean the oven for a couple of hours, come back, go out for a walk, go and read a book, go and watch a film, or just something that is just different, you know, just go and watch a film that is, you know, outside of what you normally watch, or anything, you know, it's a TV series, it doesn't have to be a film. Just anything that just, I guess, just takes you out of that mode of like, I need to think about this script, or I need to think about this copy, or I need to think about this review. Because you never know, sometimes by just doing nothing, that inspiration comes to you. Yeah. By the, you know, chance and coincidence. Like, and then suddenly, right, I know how to tackle it now. Do you know what I mean? The amount of times I've kind of gone to bed and I've like trying to sleep, and then suddenly the words come to me, and it's like, why now? Why am I trying to sleep? And then suddenly out of bed, right? Like, let me write this down before I forget, and then I can tackle it in the morning. It's things like that. It's as simple as that. How about you, Muriel?
Yeah, I agree with everything Kelechi just said. And so when I was talking about that time that I was writing, I was having like a bad day, and like I just started crying and just started writing. I was meant to be writing something else, and I was just stuck, and I couldn't get, I mean, this wasn't why I started getting upset and everything like that, but I couldn't get my mind into the right place for that script that I was doing. That was a kids thing, and what came out of me was not a kids thing. So like I was stuck in that moment, and as I said, like writing the other thing kind of like just released everything, got it out. I started watching a film, and then I started crying, and then started writing this whole thing, and then that released everything, and then I went back to the other script that I was doing. So it is that kind of like stepping away, like not trying to force it. When you try and force it, horrible things come out, like horrible things in when you're writing. It's like it just doesn't work. So it's all about stepping away, trying to find something else, trying to understand. I mean, like you can try and sit there and maybe try and understand what is going wrong, or why you're not getting it, or but that just sometimes makes it worse. So sometimes it's about stepping away, watching something that you enjoy, something that just makes you feel good, something that takes you away from it, going for a walk. I find my favorite place, I know it sounds weird, but my favorite place to write is on the tube or on train or a bus or something like that. For some reason, when I'm traveling, like it just works for me. And so a change of environment can help. Like I've got a friend who likes to go to the British Library when it was open. He used to go there and just kind of like sit in there and just write, and that works for him. But for me, going to a coffee shop works sometimes, sitting on a train works sometimes, and sometimes it's about changing your environment where you can. Sometimes I might sit on my table and write and just do really well, and other times it's not working, so I'll go and sit on my bed and I'll start writing, and that just that comfortability and that change of place helps me sometimes. And then, as Kelechi was saying, music, different music helps release your minds, release things going on. There's no right or wrong way with anything. It's just about trying to find a way to kind of like relax and step out of yourself and come away from it. And as Kelechi was saying, like sometimes watching something different, listening to different music, going for a run, having a chat with your friend, going hanging out with, playing with, like I've got lots of god kids that I like to run around and play with and be silly with and stuff like that, and that can just kind of like just drop a nugget and be like, oh my god, yeah. And in that moment, and I know it sounds really sorry, this hit me, but like there was one time where like I was stuck on a short, the one that I was writing when my dad passed away, and there was something that just wasn't feeling right, and I just couldn't get it. And I was like, oh, this is getting on my nerves. I went and had a shower and it hit me. Like, so you never know where it's kind of like going to come from. But yeah, like sometimes it's just about stepping away and just doing something that's different. And yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you, Kelechi, and thank you, Muriel, for joining us today. I'm sure the audience can agree that you gave us some good gems that people can take on and use. So yeah, thank you again. We will now be taking questions from our audience on Zoom and Instagram Live. So on Instagram, we had someone asking, how can I get my work published and where?
Published in what regard? As I don't know, Kelechi, do you have an answer that you want to start with, or should I just try?
I mean, I think it just depends on the context. I mean, it's, if I think about going back to film critic reviews, if you've got a blog, if you've got, if you're comfortable being in front of a screen, I see most people utilize social media with, and then just sort of build up their platform, and therefore they build up their connections and the networks and the collaborations. If it's maybe for books or something like that, it's probably wise maybe to hire an agent and then have that discussion over like how do you get yourself into that space. But I guess for scripts, I guess is coming up with the idea and then just try and push it into the right hands, and that kind of thing. I guess don't be afraid of rejection, and even don't be afraid of when like people don't reply back to your emails. Try and chase up with people and then try and get kind of constructive feedback that way. I think that. Oh yeah, I think that's. I think it's just trying to push it into the right people's hands and try and make those connections. I mean, even if one person says no, like somebody somewhere down the line will probably say yes.
Yeah, I think there's a saying that's supposed to be something like, for every 10 no's there's a yes, or something like that. But self-publishing is a great way forward as well. Like if you can do that if you don't want to, because sometimes if you wait for someone else, you could be waiting 5 years, 6 years, but like you don't want to do that. You want to keep going, keep creating. So putting yourself out there and putting your things out yourself, or finding a couple of friends, or even just going on what do you call it? I was watching a webinar recently where this woman, a high writer, was saying that she just goes and connects with people and says, oh, I like what you did, I'm interested in doing that, are you interested in doing this with me potentially, and kind of like making connections that way. So doing it yourself and then getting people interested in that way, that's a great way to do it, if you don't want to just start knocking on doors and trying to get someone to publish you.
I mean, we even like, we're going to do a writer's workshop at Relaxation Studios, which I'm going to be headlining in the next, couple of months. Hopefully, touch wood, COVID is, not saying a thing in the past, but like just die down a little bit so we can do it in person. But we will try and work out those logistics. But that hopefully that writers forum will help, like, in terms of we'll talk about publishing, we'll talk about how we can get into like commissioners' hands, and even if you do want to write a book. That's one of my plans. It's something like we can have that kind of discussion, because when you think about it, that the confidence, but there's not many like places you can just come and just actually chat about writing and how you can get that start. So look forward. Look forward to getting open the doors for everyone. Absolutely.
And can I just say that Heidi on here has just said a good way of getting your stories into the right hands is looking at the companies you enjoy or what you want to give. And that's like looking at the credits at the end of TV and shows and stuff like that. That's a really great way. I mean, that's something that I've done as well, like just looking at TV credits of people that are in the industry, shows that you enjoy and things like that, and just trying to reach out to those people. And you never know, say, oh, can I just spend 5 minutes of your time, just kind of like and just talk to people in that way and just build relationships that way. So yeah, as Heidi said.
Thank you. I believe Onka Foom is going to go live.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi guys. I have a question for Muriel, but Kelechi, I would love to hear if you've got like also an input as well. So I was wondering how you went about writing your idea and then put it in a story concept, and then get your draft. So what would you include in that story concept when you say story concept?
So sorry, say that again for me, please. Sorry.
So you kept talking about having a story concept, and I wanted to know, what do you mean by that and what do you include?
Okay, story concept. So the concept of the story is what the story is about. So what should I use as an example? So for You Got Me, the concept was actors and how their talent draws people in. So that was the story concept, but that was the underlined, but the concept was that this woman is watching an actor and he's in, like, as she's watching him, she's getting drawn more and more into everything that he does and falling deeper and deeper for him. So as I said, like, sometimes it's just different ways. Sometimes it's just writing the idea. So I might start writing it out in novel format first to kind of like get it down, and then break it into a script format where I've got what happens, what I so what happens, and then kind of like the dialogue and the words and everything like that, and then kind of like build it up from there and add in more kind of like directions of what we're seeing and what's happening on the screen and stuff like that. So that's how I personally go about it. Sometimes I might write out all the dialogue because I don't know exactly what's happening, but it's just kind of like an argument or something that's happening, and so I write the dialogue and then kind of like try and build it that way. Other times I've written a script where I wanted to get the concept out and the imagery out, and I've written all the actions that happen, but there's no dialogue yet. So I've got these things happening and stuff like that. So I know it's not helpful, but it's whatever works for you, kind of like get something down. If it's the dialogue and if it's something that you can hear and you hear an argument or whatever not happening, you write that part down first. If it's something that is something else, then you just kind of like write what works for you or what happens for you. Try and understand how it starts, what happens in the main body of it, and then how it ends as well, what the conclusion is. That's important to have. I don't know if does that answer your question, or
Kind of, yeah.
go on.
No, because I just wanted to know, how do you know when you've got a draft done and you can send it out? So I'm guessing having something from beginning to end is very important.
Yeah, definitely. Having something to beginning to end, having something that when you read through it makes sense. And also, I mean, your first draft is always going to be really sketchy. So I would have a friend that you can kind of like send it to just to read through. And if they don't understand it, then you go back and you try and see where things haven't kind of like lined up. Because when you're writing, things that are in your head don't always come out onto the page. So you have to go over it and read it out loud. That is a great way to do it. Read what you've written out loud, because when you read it out loud, you see the holes and you see bits that you've left out and things that you may have missed.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then, yeah.
I was gonna add, even if, I mean, I'm not necessarily a script writer, but what I know from certain writers, what they like to do is break down their concept and put it into post-it notes and then just plaster it on the wall and then just start rearranging the narrative and see, does that plot work? Does that work? All right, that's getting scrapped. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's always trying to put in that due diligence and scrutiny. As Muriel said, talk it out loud, share it with a friend. And then as soon as it at least starts to make some sort of relevant sense, then I think you would know when it's complete. And then you can, hopefully send that out to, commissioners or somebody who, will put that in the right hands.
Does that answer your question?
It does. And I got a final question. You talked about dialogue, and you mentioned how you would have conversations on the train. Are there other places where you can actually get, help with your dialogue?
I think for me, dialogue is just, I know it sounds really bad, but eavesdropping. And I met an actor, I've forgotten his name now, but he was in one of the Harry Potter films. We were working on, I wasn't working, I was with someone else who was working with him. And he said he just likes to sit at cafes and just listen to people's conversations around him. And that is kind of like how this is one of the best things you have to be able to do as a writer, is listen and try and understand people. When you listen to people, you hear people's patterns and different way people say things. And I'm sorry, but I eavesdrop like mad on trains and public places and wherever I am. I just like to listen to people's conversations and kind of like, I know it's really bad to say, but I do. And this is how you kind of like, by listening to people and things like that, you kind of get to hear different people's and mixing with various different people, because when you mix with a certain, like, so my parents are Ghanaian. If I was to only listen to Ghanaian people, then that's how everything would be perceived in my mind. But because I've got friends that are from the Caribbean, friends that are from like Asia and India and like wherever else, like I've got friends from all over, European friends, British friends, like you hear different people talking and different people talking different ways and have different slangs and terminology and just patterns of conversation kind of thing. And I know it sounds really bad and I probably shouldn't say this, but I find sometimes listening to TV talk is really bad because a lot of times you can predict what they're going to say. So I wouldn't ever go to TV conversations to get dialogue. Like, I think listen to people around you, general life people. Yeah.
Just be as authentic as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So we have a question from Heidi. I visually imagine my stories, but I do find it hard to actually write it down. Is there any advice on how to just put pen to paper?
Yeah, so it can be really hard. I would say the easiest way to start is probably with dialogue, because it's a conversation. Whatever's happening is generally a conversation that's happening, even if it's with someone internally. So if you're finding getting the whole idea down, start with the dialogue, have that part down, and then when you go over it again, you can add in more information and add in. And as I said, like my first drafts are always in email drafts. So I write in my email, and I get a Word document if I'm at home, and I can do that. Because when you go straight into script, it can be really daunting and stuff like that. So my first drafts are always on something that just allows me to do it whatever I want. So write it that way, go over it and go over it. So yeah, build it up. And that's the thing, like don't think that it has to be any one way or the other. My thing is always about building it up. Like with even when you go into professional script rooms and things like that, they refine things, they go over it and over it and over it a million times. So yeah.
Thank you. And we have one more question. Trying to write as a hobby and writing as a career, how can we separate the two? Put me on the spot.
I mean, like, it just really depends on the type of writing you want to do. You know, me being a film critic is fun until you know that the money ain't there to pay the bills, to put money in the gas or put money in the electric. So I mean, I think you have to try and find that balance, and everybody's each to their own. If I use myself as an example, you know, I don't necessarily just think just about writing. You know, I do tech, I do you know, other activities. And then when I'm finding myself back into the headspace where like, actually, I've got a great idea, even if it's like, you know, something that I've, you know, I don't know how to articulate, but it's just like, I might want to revisit it next time. I just write on a notebook or just something to kind of convey it at a later day when I'm like, okay, I'm right back in the zone to kind of write. So I know it might not answer your question, but I think it's just trying to find a balance. So if you feel like it's overwhelming, take a step back. If you feel like you're doing something else other than what you passionately feel like you're doing, readdress that and find how can you slip in writing into the process. I mean, I've tried them both. You know, I've written reviews and stuff into like the god awful hours of the morning, and then waking up, you know, 2 hours later to be ready for work, doing a full-time job. So, you know, it's not always practical, but as long as I think the most important thing is also enjoying it. I think as soon as you start to feel like writing is a chore, step away, come back at it another day, anything like that, because the beauty of writing for me is a gift. And writing opens those doors to, you know, to so many different things. You know, if it's from a creative industry perspective, you know, writing can open the doors to directing. It can open the doors to, you know, in my profession in technology, it can open the doors to producing, because writing, no matter what you're doing, like here's a challenge. Think of the best song ever written, or you ever heard, sorry, or the best film you've ever seen, or even a TV episode that moved you emotionally. Like they all start from the writer. And sometimes the writer can be that visionary to kind of propel you into those different spaces. So yeah, try and find those balances. Writing is a gift, protect it at all costs.
Yes, thank you. Right. Okay. Let's see.
That's the only ones I've got. You get it?
Yeah, that's the only ones I've got.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's a wrap then. Thank you again, Muriel Narh and Kelechi Ehenulo. It's great. Thank you. You gave us some gems, like you educated us all. And yeah, I hope the audience enjoyed it as well. So thank you again for those who stayed with us through the whole 2 hours. Don't forget to join us next week for our video editing workshop, which will be delivered by the one and only Helen Haley. But yes, I've been your host, Kate Fullerton, from Real Estate Studios. So that's it, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.